This is a towel rack sign I made a few years ago. It's nothing fancy, just an oak board with some painted stencil letters and a few hooks. It's served its purpose well, but after years in the sun and rain, it's definitely starting to show its age. So I think it's time for a remake, but this time I wanted to try something a little different. The overall design is still going to be simple, but instead of painting letters onto the surface, I'm going to carve them directly into the wood using a router, taking about a quarter of an inch of material out from the letter to make them recessed into the board. Once the material is removed, I'll spray paint the entire face of the board and then sand the surface back down. That'll leave the paint only on the inside of the carved letters while exposing the natural wood grain everywhere else. After that, I'll add some simple hardware for the hooks and hang everything using a French cleat system. If you've never used one before, it's basically just a board ripped at a 45-degree angle down the center. One side mounts to the wall, the other mounts to the sign, and the two lock together. It's super simple, really strong, and easy to remove if needed. All right, let's get to work. My original plan was to salvage the hooks from the old sign. They were still in pretty good shape, so I'll start by removing those first. I'm going to switch things up a little bit here, and instead of using oak, I'm going to use teak. Teak is naturally weather resistant, which makes it perfect for outdoor projects like this. Now, it may be hard to tell, but this particular board has a very slight crack in it. At the store, I was optimistic that I could just clamp and glue it back together, but even with pipe clamps, this thing wasn't moving. So at this point, I've got two choices. Leave it split and place some sort of bow tie so it doesn't get worse, or just cut the crack section off entirely. I'm going with option 2. The sign will just end up a little bit shorter than I originally planned. This is rough sawn lumber, so the board has a bit of a crook to it. To fix that, I'll start by running one side across the joiner to get a straight edge, then clean up the opposite side in the table saw. Yeah, perfect. Next, I'll use a straight board to lay out a consistent line for my lettering. For the stencil, I printed each letter individually per page and lined them up across the board. The font I chose here is called Pacifico. I mainly picked it because of the rounded shapes and flowing lines. This should make writing by hand a heck of a lot easier. It's got no sharp corners or straight lines to mess up. To transfer the letters, I'm just tracing them with a utility knife using fairly heavy pressure. There are definitely cleaner ways to do this. Carbon paper would probably work great, but honestly, this method works just fine. You do need to add in an additional step, which is to go back over the faint cut lines with a pencil so they're easier to see. That wasn't so bad. Mission accomplished. Okay, now for the fun part. I've got two router bit options here. This 90-degree bit will leave a flatter bottom surface inside the letters, but the edges won't have much depth or character. This 45-degree bit gives a really nice beveled edge, but it leaves the bottoms uneven. I decided to start with the 45-degree bit and see how it looks. And as expected, the outline looked great. I really liked the angled edges, but once I started clearing out the centers, it became pretty tedious, and honestly, it looked just messy to me. I decided to switch back to the 90-degree bit and ended up liking that look a lot more. From here, it's basically just a whole lot of routing. And honestly, that part is really, really satisfying. With the letters carved out, it's time for a little paint. I really like the color from the original sign, so I'm sticking with it. The color is called Seafoam. I'll spray the entire face of the board, making sure to fully coat the inside of the letters. Once the paint dries, I can trim the board down to its final size, something I probably could have done earlier, and then soften the edges with the rounder a bit using my palm router. After that, it's time to sand the surface clean and reveal the lettering underneath. For this finish, I'm using teak oil. Now, technically, teak doesn't really need a finish. One of the reasons teak oil is so popular for outdoor furniture and boats is because it naturally contains high amounts of oils and silica, which makes it extremely resistant to water and rot all on its own. And a fun fact, teak oil isn't actually made from teak. Maybe you knew that, but I actually didn't. It's usually just a blend of oils and varnishes designed specifically for dense hardwoods like teak. So why use it at all? Mostly for appearance. Left unfinished, teak will eventually weather into that silvery gray color you see on old outdoor furniture, which looks great too. But I want to keep more of that warm golden color and help the grain pop a little bit, so a light coat of oil makes a big difference. The French cleat from the old sign was still in great shape, so I just decided to reuse it. That just meant trimming it down slightly and mounting it to the back of the new sign. I also decided to update the hardware a little bit and paint these black hooks using that same seafoam paint that I did the letters. And once those are dry, they can get mounted to the board. Now, because the sign ended up shorter than planned, I've got some extra space on either side of it to match the same width of the old sign. Luckily, I had some leftover teak scraps from the earlier cuts, so I quickly shaped a couple of matching side pieces and reused the original hooks from the old sign. Kind of a nice little callback to the original build. Plus, it's some bonus towel storage. So, no French clean on these. These are going to get screwed directly into the wall. So, I'll countersink the screws first, then the hooks mount over those screws, completely hiding the oil. Now we just hang everything up. Now, I've done some simple projects, but this was a simple project. Most of the total time was just waiting for the paint to dry, and I was able to use really basic tools. I think I spent less than $60 on the wood and maybe another 20 bucks on hardware. Actual working time was probably under 3 or 4 hours total. And honestly, projects like this are some of my favorite. They're simple, functional, and still make a huge difference in a space without requiring a massive investment in time or money. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some really wet towels to hang up. See you next time.